It is a Star Wars show, and welcome to it. I am your host, Jon Justice, and thank you so much for checking out another episode. What do you say we talk about Skeleton Crew, Episode 3? I have some emails that I want to get into this week as well. And listen, I'm not going to delay. I really love this show, to the point where I was watching Episode 3, and had to watch it early. I was heading out to see the 10th anniversary of Interstellar with my 22-year-old. It's his favorite movie. And because of that, I wasn't going to wait to watch it with my now 18-year-old. It's his birthday today. So he agreed that I could watch it without him. And so Melinda, my wife, was going to watch it with him. So Logan and I are watching it. Melinda and Kyle are going to watch it later in the day. So Melinda is walking through as we are in the middle of the episode, and she makes a passing comment to Logan and says, "Your dad is weird." And Logan goes, "Why?" And Melinda goes, "Because he has this huge grin on his face." This show just makes me happy. And this episode 3, titled Very Interesting as an Astrogation Problem, was my favorite episode so far. I will say that I wish that one day Disney Plus and most streaming platforms would create the ability to watch all these episodes back to back without the breaks. Meaning that you start episode 1, you get the intro, and then when it gets to the end of episode 1, episode 2 immediately starts. We don't have credits. You don't have the what happened last week. You don't have the intro, just right to the opening scene. I'm fine when they do sort of the opening scene and then you get the title card. That's fine. But I just wish we could watch these consistently, because the only complaint that I have is that I want to watch this as a movie, and the episodes are so short that it could end up being and feeling just like one big movie. There have been those fans out there that have gone so far as to create their own special editions of the television shows. There was one for Ahsoka. There was another one for Kenobi. I don't watch those because, especially for Ahsoka, because they cut out a whole bunch of stuff and they do their own edit of it. I'm really, really enjoying Skeleton Crew, though, and it reminded me of something. I'll get into the details of what I liked about this week's episode, and then I'll go through your emails, answer your emails this week. But it reminded me of something. There's a fun in Star Wars, and having this show focused on these kids, and now we have this adult in Jod Nana Wood, who I'm actually enjoying more than I expected. And I'm very interested to see what his background is, because clearly he is Force sensitive. The actor himself, Jude Law, has said that he's Force sensitive, but he's kind of hesitated to go and say that he's a Jedi. But what I like about it is, if I can explain this correctly. So I was a kid when I saw the first Star Wars movie, A New Hope. Mentioned that many times, 5 years old, right? And I grew up with the original trilogy as a kid. And it was fun. There was a joyfulness to it, right? They were fun. Those original 3 were fun adventures. And I like so much of what's come afterwards, but the essence of 4, 5, and 6 is the adventure aspect of it. And that has gotten lost in some of what we've seen as the content has matured, as the audience has matured. And what I like about this is they brought the fun back, and now we're having fun with kids that were our age when we saw the originals. And I touched upon this last week in the review of the first 2. I'm watching it with a smile on my face because I'm just going on a Star Wars adventure. And I was reminded that I kind of have my boxes that I check of Star Wars tropes that I like, right? And that's why I like Ahsoka so much, because it's got a little bit of everything. It's got lightsabers, it's got the Force, it's got the droids, it's got some aliens, got a lot of space battles in it. And with Skeleton Crew, we're tapping in a bit to the Force. I hope they're brave enough to do some tie-ins to the Force and Jedi even further than what we've seen in the interest of whim. But I was reminded that in A New Hope, that really wasn't the focus of the film. It was a fantasy, but it really was just this adventure about Luke Skywalker and our going on the journey and experience with him and him learning of the Force, much in the same way the Skeleton Crew is and Wim is in the show. And so therefore, I was kind of able to appreciate it with, you know what, it doesn't have to be all these things. Do I like it? Am I having fun? Yeah, man, I'm having a blast with this show. And I love to see this unfolding. Is it Stranger Things? No. Stranger Things is Stranger Things. It doesn't need to be Stranger Things. Can you compare it to something like Stranger Things? Sure. But it's got, obviously, its own mythology, its own style, its own pacing. But every single episode that I've watched so far, I don't want to end, and I'm disappointed when it does. Not in a negative way, but because I want more. So in this episode, I really appreciated the fact that when you get into the show, first off, we go back to the parents and we see that they're struggling in missing their children. There is seriously something ominous about what's going on at Aden. The fact that these droids don't even want to go out searching for the children because they feel like there's so much at risk. I'm definitely invested in the storyline of what's happening with this planet, and certainly when we get to the moon planet and Kim, the Star Wars owl, we get into more of the 5 planets that were hidden in the Republic, and only Aden is one that wasn't destroyed, which raises questions of how did the other ones get destroyed? Was the Death Star out there destroying these planets, other planets, and we were completely unaware of this? I mean, you want to talk about a bold move, that would be a bold move. So we have the parents, we find out they're, wanting to get their kids and certainly are freaked out about this whole thing. We get a little bit more of what's taking place on Aden. And then we are right back to the pirate, the space pirate cove, and they're already broken out of prison, which I just thought was great. Not wasting any time. Again, Jod Na Wood, I'm enjoying, Jod Na Wood, I'm enjoying more so than I did before. The kids the Skeleton Crew end up forcing him to go back and get the droid Shmi, which, I enjoyed at the moment. I'm like, no, yes, I just want Shmi to show up so we can get away from the Space Pirate Cove and get back out on the adventure. But then as we go and watch Jod go and find him, he runs into Ishi Tib. They have an interesting conversation. We find out a little bit more of Jod's backstory. And then we get this escape from the Space Pirate Cove, which I don't even know if maybe you realized it or picked up on it, but I felt like it was a nod to The Force Awakens when Finn and Poe steal the First Order TIE Fighter from the Star Destroyer, and the fuel line is still attached before they're able to go and escape. And I just thought the whole bit of what Jod did with the ship was just fantastic and so much fun to watch. We end up traveling to this moon that ends up offering a really unique locale. We're not back on a planet that looks like something that's on Earth. No, we're on a moon. Its setting is dark. It looks fantasy-like. We end up at the establishment for this Star Wars owl, Kim. The aesthetics of it were cool. We end up with the speakers that we've seen. I call them speakers, but, it's the little handles that come out with the eyeball on the end, the droid eyeball on the end that we first saw in Return of the Jedi. But this time they're not speaking in the same talk. It's actually talking with somebody inside of the facility. And I just thought this owl was fantastic. The way that she was animated, her dialogue, the intrigue between her and Jod Na Wood, or Crimson Jack. He's got several names now. We got confirmation that he was also Sleevo, the individual who the crew mutinied at the very opening scene from episode 1. And then we get into the intrigue of them searching for Aden, narrowing down where this now mythical, this planet of legend could actually be. The patch on the back of Fern's jacket that her mom gave her, offering up a location, and then, a potential location, narrowing it down where the planet is. And then we have Kim, for some reason, calling on the Republic and bringing in these TIE fighters. And X-Wing fighters. And then, interestingly enough, in that moment, when, at the very end of the episode, Kim asked the pilot of the X-Wing, why didn't you stop them? And he said it was too dangerous with the children on board. Okay, so the Republic is obviously after these children too, or aware and is interested and wants to go and keep them safe. But the whole escape sequence from Kim's location, her hangout, whatever you want to call it, just fantastic. Getting Neil behind the controls of the ship. I have a fondness to the storytelling right now with this ship and these characters on this ship, just because, I wrote my series, my first EMBARK book, and this is a way that I can go and promote that. But, I wrote it and I had my own characters in that book go and find, my Millennium Falcon of my story, a ship called the Anniversary, which is very similar in size, if not just slightly bigger than the one that they are flying around in. So it's always fun for me to watch a show like this, to see adventures taking place on a freighter like this, just because this is the kind of sci-fi that I'm into. This is what I wrote about. Right on down to Fern and Wim, with Neil for a brief moment behind the controls, but they're getting up into the gunners, behind the top guns, and battling with the X-Wing fighters. I mean, this is straight out of stuff that I wrote in my books, and seeing this version of it in Star Wars, I just find absolutely thrilling. This mystery unfolding, I'm fully invested in, and at the end of the day, it is just an incredibly fun show to watch, and it really is bringing back those Amblin vibes, those Goonie vibes from when we were kids, but ultimately just the fun of Star Wars. Not being bogged down by anything too heavy, while still sort of opening up to some new lore. And I hope they're brave enough to connect some of this lore to previous projects as well. I was excited, as a lot of people were, to learn that the showrunners, Christopher Ford and John Watts, they're also the writers, already have ideas for a season 2. And given the young age of the actors, we could be going on adventures with these characters for a long time. I could see a scenario where Wim and that actor end up, growing up, and he ends up learning, Jedi skills. I'm really, really loving this show. And a part of me wishing that they would release it all at once, but at the same time, I also know that I got vacation coming up. So I can do rewatches, and I can look forward to watching the episodes as vacation unfolds after one more week of doing radio. So again, ultimately, I think this is a fantastic show. 3 episodes in, and this episode was my favorite so far. Let's get to some of your listener feedback this week.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
All right, I have a couple of emails that roll in and posts up on YouTube that unfortunately I didn't get to on last week's episode. So first, let's hear from Across the Stars, who says, like you said before, John, at the end of the day, it's all subjective. These are dumb things in George's movies, and there are dumb things in Star Wars movies. It's really all up to the individual opinion. I do hope Skeleton Crew is at least fun. That's all I care about. And they're addressing the episode right before, the week before the release of the show, where I was wondering whether or not this show was only going to be catering to kids, and certainly it isn't. Pure Evil Nord, did I get that right? Sure. Says, Denny Villeneuve, talking about Denny Villeneuve not wanting to make Star Wars movies, says, likes making hard science fiction movies. Star Wars is fantasy, not science fiction. Definitely not hard sci-fi. Star Wars and Skeleton Crew are primarily for children, but also for adults. I'm going to disagree with you on making hard sci-fi, because he did Dune. And Dune has a fantasy element to it. I think if you're looking at Arrival, Blade Runner, I'll give it to you a bit, but I don't think that he's necessarily beholden to hard sci-fi. Serious sci-fi, okay, that I'll give you. I think that's probably a more accurate way to go and describe it, but thank you so much for the email. I appreciate it. Spewbaka writes, after Acolyte, I don't think it would take much of anything to be a vast improvement, talking about Skeleton Crew prior to its release. That said, we're really digging this show. It's Goonies in space, and it's nostalgic in ways that aren't fan service. It 100% captures the vibe of being a kid in the 1980s and being massively into Star Wars, indie, Goonies. It's great fun. The kids are fantastic. Really like Neil. Let's see. Shows like this in Andor and Andor show that Star Wars can really be good when it veers off from big bad guy does bad things track. Yeah, I agree with that. And thank you, Spewbucker, for the email. Friend of the show, Edwin Lowe, says, I really enjoyed the first 2 episodes. It exceeded my expectations. Another Star Wars show that is not so connected to the saga films really keeps my fandom excited. Pirates and school kids in a galaxy far, far away, I never knew I wanted, but so far enjoy. My only theories is maybe Fern and Wim become friends and their parents might start a relationship or love interest at the end of the season. Interesting. And another thought I had is Wim's mother told stories about the Jedi to him. Maybe she was a Jedi or worked with them. Other than that, we'll see what happens. Thank you. God bless. Merry Christmas and happy holidays. Thank you, Edwin. It's great to hear from you. I'm glad that you're still listening, and I've been enjoying your TikToks when they pop up on my feed. Hotwire01 writes, I agree with you, John. My expectations were so low, it didn't take a lot to meet them. That being said, I found 2 episodes, the 2 episodes, very entertaining. Definitely geared towards kids, but there was enough there to enjoy for adults as well. I'll definitely keep watching. That's more than I can say about some other Disney Plus Star Wars shows. Don't get me wrong about how badly they destroyed Obi-Wan and Boba Fett. Thank you, Hotwire. I appreciate that. And lastly, N Black writes this. Really digging Skeleton Crew so far. Oh, it passed the black. That's a thing now. I'm just making it up. I'm really digging Skeleton Crew so far. I thought the introduction of Jude Law's character was in the cell was great. When he said the space between us and the key is an illusion, I got that Star Wars feel I've been missing. I hope it keeps up. Star Wars needs a win right now in the worst way. Writes N Black. It passed the N Black test. There we go. How's that? Is that better? Listen, that wraps up the show for this week. Thank you so much for checking it out. I will be back next week with another episode. They'll probably be a little bit shorter. I'm heading on vacation, but I want to make sure that I keep putting out the podcast, and so I'll share with you my thoughts on episode 4 in the meantime. I would love to hear from you and your thoughts. Email me, talkshownerd@gmail.com, or if you're watching this on YouTube, drop me a comment on the YouTube page. And of course, subscribe to the channel on YouTube if you're not already. Be sure you subscribe to the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. And check me out on TikTok, at the Jon Justice, Jon on TikTok. You can also find me on Instagram there, at Jon Jon Justice on X as well. Let's see, Jon Jon Justice on Facebook. I think that about covers it, right? All right. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode. I hope wherever you are happy, you're healthy, and you're safe. Go on over and to Amazon.com. And for Christmas, you can pick up one of my science fiction books in my EMBARK science fiction series. If you like your sci-fi to be epic, like Star Wars, a space opera, filled with romance and action, EMBARK is perfect for you. I wrote it for adults, but it's great for kids 11 and older. So buy yourself a present and get me a present and pick up a copy of my book. 7 books in all in the series. Kindle Unlimited, ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audiobook. All right. I have talked enough for one day. I'm going to wrap this up, post these, go have some lunch, and do prep for Friday's radio show, Monday through Friday, 6 to 9 a.m. Central Time on the iHeartRadio app. Until next week, I hope wherever you are, you're happy, you're healthy, you're safe. God bless. Merry Christmas to you. I'll talk to you again next week. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.